So first of all, apologies for the last night's interactive session, which unfortunately we were having some problems with the AnyMeeting network, and I was extraordinarily disappointed because I think that when we do the live interaction afterwards, some of the questions that come up are brilliant. And the reason that we're revisiting PINPRICK is really to bring, I think most importantly, to bring the importance of this and of the understanding of it to those that are in stage one before visiting in July or August at Blake's. And for me, it doesn't change in its principle, but I think that the quicker we can truly understand the importance of the principle and how then it overlaps into everything else that we do, and probably into life itself as well. So strangely enough, I think that we all have a moment of epiphany when we, even though we think we understand something, or that philosophy or methodology makes sense, we don't truly realise the importance in its application. So a long while ago, and I'm sure all the information that we currently know existed at that time, but I didn't have it in my grasp and I didn't realise the importance of it. And I was playing a game of golf in Portugal, and I won't go too much into that story, but I felt at that time to deliberately horseshoe a putt. Meaning that I wanted to, in the terms of what I wanted to do, I wanted to miss a putt, but I also wanted that putt to look as though, it was a real miss and not I was being charitable. And I looked at the lip and I looked at the ball and I imagined it horseshoeing, and I took very careful aim, hit the putt at just that right pace, went off for the lip, came round the lip and horseshoed out. And incredibly, I had a huge buzz about that. Despite the fact that I missed a putt, and despite that was what I wanted to do, it was the fact that, I'd done something that was probably against the norm as much as anything. And of course, as I reflected upon it, and no, not quite, as then that week of playing golf expanded, then I started using that theory to hole more putts than I'd ever holed before. And then of course, as I started getting more educated, as I moved into golf coaching and started looking for all of the reasons why, despite all this information about the golf swing, people still weren't getting better, then I started to realise the importance of PINPRICK aim and all of the advantage of it. Now look, there's two tapes for you to watch within that stage one that goes through some of these things, but again, I just want to go over them and bring a couple of more ideas into the field. So it basically starts at the idea that by taking a PINPRICK aim, we bring in all sorts of resources, both technical and mental, than we otherwise don't have, in a world that is built around the fact that so many clients to say to us, I'm inconsistent. And well, guess what? If you're inconsistent in where you aim in the first place, then that's going to give you a hell of a lot of inconsistency. When I was working with Rob Grant last year, I took 20 swings with a 5-iron and measured one where his shoulders were and where his club face were on each shot, and then the outcome result. There wasn't, and this is, remember, a +4 player, and there wasn't one single time he aimed his shoulders in the same place or his club face in the same place, and there wasn't one single time the result was the same. And I found that quite extraordinary. So I don't know, or I did know exactly also where he was trying to aim his shoulders, and neither did he manage to aim his shoulders where he should have been aiming them in the first place. And to some degree, again, we can go back to pinprick in that because the concept of pinprick hadn't been explained properly to him, he even had the wrong idea of where he should aim his shoulders. I.e. the pinprick, or the definitive definition of where his shoulders should be aiming, if he was trying to aim his shoulders square to his intended target line, would be the definitive distance of his shoulders from the ball. So if we took that to the target, it would be, if that was his target, at the target it would still be that distance. Well, he'd misconstrued that altogether. So again, we're coming to this idea that as soon as we have a pinprick, then we can start to notice things that you wouldn't otherwise notice. I was coaching a chap that I'm actually doing a barter arrangement with on sales and marketing, and we'd done some work on his putting, and I'd mostly introduced aim point as an as a green reading strategy. I'd introduced the 17.5 inches rule, and I got him to set up anatomically correct. So we'd done all that, and you know, I just pushed him back out there to see what his response was, and he said, look, I'm still missing a lot of putts. So it was time to go and see him on the course, and what I told him about how that putter should sit, he was still doing incorrectly. But again, that club face was not aiming at the target. He was not setting the centre of the club to the ball, and he was not setting the ball to the line, and he wasn't picking the right line that he was aiming at. So it took the whole 8 holes of giving him feedback before he got it right. And then of course he rang me up yesterday and he said I putted magnificently. Over the 18 holes I was 10 putts less. Well, sure, you know, if you're not going to aim the putter face correctly in the first place, if you're not going to set the putter face, the putter head to the ground correctly, if you're then not going to put yourself anatomically correct to that putter, what chance have you got? Everything in there is pinprick. So as soon as we get this pinprick aim, then we can start to look at the distances that we hit clubs and the variance with that. And their variance, obviously we've talked about this before, their variance to wind, slope and temperature. And interestingly enough, we know that we can construct a visual plan of that by just putting the dots on a map. But I'm actually speaking to some mathematicians and Joe Daniels about actually coming up with a formula where once we know what our pinprick is and we measure the adjusted distance from that pinprick, short, long, left, right, we can actually put those figures into an equation and have a definitive, an absolute definitive average about how far, short, long, left or right, when we want to get to our pinprick, we aim to our fallout pinprick to get to our pinprick. So again, thereby increasing the chances of having that hole-in-one that we're after. And again, within that whole format, you've got hours and hours of work with your client that will give them automatic increase in consistency of play just because they're picking a pinprick target and then they're aiming correctly to that pinprick. Now once we've done all that, obviously then we increase that the visual part of our imagery and the audio part of our imagery because it's so specific. Obviously working under the belief that the more information we give to the brain about where we want to go and how we want to go there, the more that it will help us get there. So I think that when it comes to, when you fully understood how much effort you should put into listening those tapes, and the metaphors that are within those tapes, because it's the metaphors that are going to be your tools in getting your client to buy into PINPRICK. Because you've got to have them buying into PINPRICK at a deep level, so that it will give them all of those intrinsical advantages and intrinsical changes that they are due to you, but nevertheless it's coming from their resources. So it's not just to understand PINPRICK aim at stage 1, it's to be able to, through stage 1 and stage 2, be able to demonstrate to me that you could sell this. So there's a little clue. We are going to ask you to actually sell this to each other while we're there. And part of that is going to be knowing your metaphors and even adding to your metaphors. So study those tapes really carefully and find out those metaphors, learn those metaphors, and they should be almost learned, you know, verbatim, like some of the inoculations. But of course, when we carry the PINPRICK further on, then that would also take us to, let's say, things like our language and specific feedback. So how precise we are with our language, and again, to some degree, the quality of the language. I was watching, and I really don't mean to be critical about Sean Foley in any way, shape or form, because he's a little bit of an icon to me. I really like what he does and how he moves. But he's been doing a little bit of work with Revolution Golf, and there's some sets of videos that he's put out there, and you know he's trying to help people become better golfers through these tips. Which, yeah, I kind of don't like that idea of, you know, that's how I'm going to make money. I think there are better ways, but nevertheless, you know, if he's going to do that professionally, then great. Now, I was watching one of these, and it was talking about chipping and pitching actions, and he mentioned Steve Stricker, and Steve Stricker has, as far as his movement goes, there's probably less movement and less moving parts and his swing than anybody's, and it's certainly one that definitely I would introduce to the beginner, you know, i.e. we've got, you know, relatively no movement in those hands. It's just a very simple turn, and then we're dragging and keeping the lean on the shaft, and there's no, you know, hand action or too much flipping going on. And so he started to demonstrate this, and then he said something that was really quite interesting. He said, yeah, you need to be very stable, and there's very little feet movement, so it's like that you know, you've got to be stable. It's like that you've got to be on ice, you know, so you know, if you move, you'll slip. And I thought, well, is that the best metaphor? Is that a PINPRICK metaphor? Is it a powerful metaphor for stability? And I thought, well, no, it's not. It's not a very well chosen word. For me, it already had me slipping all over the place, and whereas I wanted it, you know, nailed into the ground. But of course, again, it slightly scares me, because you know, I know that we need a little bit of movement, a tiny little bit of movement of the COG towards the target, so that again the club can just lag fractionally behind, even in a solid chipping movement. We want this slight movement of low point, maybe that little bit nearer the target, to make sure we get the little ball before the big ball. And I thought that was really you know, a poor metaphor, but I put it into the PINPRICK strategy. And then also, as I watched the video, then I also saw here the heel of his off-target foot go back further off target, meaning that the centre of gravity may have even gone fractionally backwards after impact. Now, again, I think that visual PINPRICK that he left could cause an unconscious disaster. So he has the capacity to look at those videos with a PINPRICK mentality and deliver back to the editor in PINPRICK with pinprick feedback about what it is that could be perfect. And if he's not looking in that sort of detail, then I think he's got to be very careful about what message is going to be understood by it. So I think this whole pinprick in everything that we do gives us opportunities for improvement in everything in life, let alone in this pinpricking the target, seeing how it gets there, emotionally feeling what you'd feel like when it gets there, and then getting out of the way and allowing it to get there, and then making a non-judgmental feedback about what actually happened, because that is the true meaning of our pinprick, and it's the true way for people to then start to measure everything outside of that and measure everything they learn. So I encourage you wholeheartedly to listen to those tapes again if you're a stage 3, to remind yourself to take note of all the areas where they could be important to you, and start to walk the talk of pinprick, not only as you deliver, but when you play golf. Because I think that when you play golf, you're walking the talk of pinprick is your opportunity to discover as many things and as many ways that pinprick can be used to improve your client's performance, your performance, and your life. So that's going to be it for today. I'm going to publish this on the members network, and then I will set, when I get everything sorted out with any meeting, I will set a 15 to 30 minute open question and answer session on this particular tape. So thanks for listening, and I hope you all have a tremendous golfing weekend. Thank you.